If you want your army to win, to succeed, its back has to be against the wall.
So today I'm here with Joe De Sena, Spartan Races. I'm sure everybody's heard of it. How many tickets do you guys sell a year? 1.5 million, you said?
1.5 million, 40 countries. We'll host 1,100 events this year.
How do you scale that?
There was no off time for me.
A lot of people don't know this. By the time you were my age in college, you had a multi-million-dollar pool cleaning business, right?
I did, and ultimately I sold it.
For how much?
I sold it for
You grew up in Queens around mobsters.
yeah.
What was that like?
My neighbor was the head of the Banana organized crime family, and his name was Joe, and he said, come over on Saturday. And I went over there, and he taught me some business lessons. He said, on time is late. I told you to be here at 8, you should be here at 7:45. They needed somebody they could trust.
There have been multiple times in the business's life cycle where maybe you have doubts, maybe it's just really tough.
Every day, there's only one way out. God forbid somebody close to you dies, you go into a depression. God forbid you've got a drug problem. Whatever that thing is, there is only one way out, and that is.
So today I'm here with Joe De Sena, household name company, Spartan Races. I'm sure everybody's heard of it. How many tickets do you guys sell a year? 1.5 million, you said? That's insane.
1.5 million, 40 countries. We'll host 1,100 events this year.
Nice. And we were just, before the camera started, talking about the value of giving away free value. And it always makes it back around. And because every time I see Joe, he's like, give away tickets, give away tickets. And we do the same thing. That's what I wanted to explain to you is we do this thing where if you lose a ton of weight, we'll give you a free pair of SquidHaus, right? Because sure, it's like $15 for an item, but now you're a customer for life. So I think you're the king of that. You understand that value.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a lot of resistance internally and externally. Like, why would you give complimentary tickets? And it's like, number one, our mission is to change lives, just like your mission is. And so I'm never going to let money get in the way of changing that life. That's the mission. And then two is that person probably buys a hat and a t-shirt, gets a tattoo, tells 10 friends, becomes completely addicted to it.
And runs it 10 more times.
Exactly.
100%. Well, let's talk about early life because, right now you're, how old are you?
55, I think. Yeah,
55. You look great for your age, by the way, man.
Thank you.
Extremely. Most people, when they start getting up there, start having knee problems and stuff. And he kicked my ass in workouts past few days. Actually, that was a lie. I didn't show up this morning. He tried to give me. He came up to my door at 6 a.m. this morning. I didn't. I couldn't do it because I wanted to feel good for the podcast.
I don't want to ruin your image because you are badass, but you had your thumb in your mouth and you were sleeping.
Yeah, sure. Good one. Let's talk about those early days when you were my age, maybe even a little before. You grew up in Queens around mobsters, which is insane to think about. What was that like?
Well, when you're a kid, you don't know any better. If I grew up around Olympic tennis players or runners or auto mechanics, that's what you become because you're a kid and that's the environment you're in. They just happen to be mobsters. It was the organized crime capital of the world. If you saw the movie Goodfellas, it was ground zero for that. So lots of rolls of $100 bills and at a time when $100 bills really were $100 bills, right? Lots of nice cars, lots of nice houses, and then everybody else, including my family, like we aspired to get those things, to move up the ladder, and you don't really know of another way if everybody's doing those things. So they either were running, family businesses, pizza places, cement yards, masonry yards, et cetera, landscapers, sprinkler companies. My case, a swimming pool business. So we're blue collar, grinding every day, or they were doing bad things and making a lot of money, but highly respected. Even the little kids, we wanted to be that. And it definitely gave me a kick in my step. It gave me a little bit of a hustle.
Do you think that was ever, or at any point in your childhood, was that ever attractive, that route in life? Or were you like, kind of directed down the other path?
I mean, money, power, respect is very attractive. Hard work, very attractive. So whether you like them, those guys work hard. Yeah. They work hard at bad things. And so very, very attractive. All the kids wanted it. Yeah, thank God. My mother got me out of there. My mother brought me to Ithaca. My dad used to say to me, if you spend as much time, Joseph, if you spend as much time as they spend doing what they do, doing it the right way, you'll make a fortune.
I do genuinely believe if there are ways to cut corners in life, and a lot of people do it, they screw people over, and they think that gives you a little bit of an advantage. But I truly believe it's only temporary, and it does come back to bite you in the ass one way or another. I really don't know anyone who's crazy successful like yourself that has screwed people over and then they stay there. Someone always comes back for them, or it makes its way around. I've been screwed over before. I'm sure you've been screwed over. And I do genuinely think if you do good, people might take advantage of you. But in the long run, if you work hard and you do good and you provide value, it will make its way back.
You know, I believe it's like planting seeds, right? Like if you could build a giant network of people you've helped and taken care of and done the right thing for, you'll be harvesting those plants for the rest of your life. So build a giant, farm of seeds that you've planted. It costs you money, it costs you time, it costs you energy, but oh my God, the next 20, 30, 40 years, you'll be reaping the rewards.
For sure. And give and don't expect anything back. Right. I think a lot of people, what do I get out of this? Someone asks them for a favor. If they don't immediately see a way they can get something out of it, they say no. But in reality, once again, whether it's direct or indirect, it does come back around. I've experienced that a million times. I feel like I'm the luckiest guy, the luckiest 23-year-old in the world right now, because guys like yourself want to come and give a helping hand or give advice or share an experience. And I don't feel like I deserve it sometimes, but I try and be proactive about giving back to maybe those that are a little behind me at my age or older or whatever. So I think that's really valuable.
Anybody out there that's wondering how to do it, you'd be surprised. You go to an elder and you ask, like Lucas asks, everybody wants to lend a hand. Everybody, because there's so few Lucases. There's so few people that are getting after it, that are asking, that are leaning in, that are listening to the response and actually going to take action.
Yeah, 100%. Right? Well, you started your first business at how old? It's a pool cleaning business, right? 11. That's crazy. And how does that come about? Were you working for someone and then you had the chance to take over, or you just said,
no, my neighbor was the head of the Banana organized crime family, and he saw my family was going through a divorce. I was with my dad in the summer, and his name was Joe, and he said, come over on Saturday and clean my pool. I'll pay you $35. And so I didn't know what I was doing, but I went over there and he taught me some business lessons. He said, on time is late. I told you to be here at 8. You should be here at 7:45. He said, I'm going to ask you to clean the pool. You're going to get paid to clean the pool. But if you straighten up the lawn furniture, clean the shed, do the window, do all these other things you're not getting paid for, you will be recommended and we will build a big business for you. They needed somebody they could trust in the backyard. And then number 3, don't have your hand out, to your point. Don't be looking for return right away. Do the right thing, lean in, help out. You'll get paid. Don't worry about it.
100%. And then a lot of people don't know this, but obviously you're known for Spartan now, very successful entrepreneur, but you also had a lot of success in those early days, right? By the time you were my age in college earlier, you had a multi-million-dollar pool cleaning business, right?
I did.
How do you scale that, especially as a kid?
Well, I was a maniac. As I think about the answer to that question, for anybody out there listening that wants to build a business or building there was no off time for me. If I was driving through a neighborhood, for example, heading to a customer's house and I saw construction work going on, I stopped. I rang the bell. I stuck a flyer. In the old days, we would leave flyers. There wasn't social media, right? I couldn't send out emails. I stuck a flyer in the mailbox. I shook a contractor's hand that happened to be outside. I painted my name and a picture of me on the side of the truck. Everybody knew me as Joe, the pool guy. So every chance I got, I was growing the business. I never sat still, never complacent. And before you know it, by the time I graduated college, I had 700 accounts, 700 customers.
Was grinding so hard at a young age as opposed to, these days people are playing video games or on TikTok, but back then it's, playing football or sports. Was spending that much time on the business early on because you wanted money, because you loved the process of building it, because you wanted to get ahead as quick as possible? What was your motivation for that? Where does that come from?
I never questioned it. I don't remember one time. It's a funny story. and then I'll answer the question succinctly, but I had hired a kid out of Cornell, one of my classmates, to come for the summer. Might have been our junior year or our senior, probably our junior year. And he was a bit more sophisticated than me. He got into Cornell University the right way. And on Sunday, he was used to reading the New York Times. And he suggested, Ben, his name was Ben, he suggested, hey, let's take Sunday off and read. I had never, in all the years I was running, I had never took one day off. I didn't even know what it was like to take a day. Like, never even occurred to me that you would take a day off and sit and read the paper, recover. Like, I just wanted to work. Why? I wanted to get ahead. I wanted to have a house. I wanted to have a family. I looked at my parents' divorce and that fracturing of the family as a result of like money problems and headaches. And I said, I don't ever want to deal with that.
Yeah, definitely.
And don't forget, I had 700 customers. So I got to look at 700 families and see how they were running their, like over 12 years, I got to see like, oh, that guy cheats on his wife. That wife cheats on the husband. Those two don't talk to each other. Those kids grew up this, like I got to see for 12 years what works and what doesn't. And I said, I never want to do that. I want to do a lot of that. And I want to have a nice house and I want to have nice things. And that was it. But I never, ever thought about taking off. And we would get in at 11 o'clock. And I mean, think about how crazy this was. We would get in at 11 o'clock at night because if you were my customer and your kid was having a birthday party the next day and you needed the pool clean, but I was busy all day, all right, we brought out sodium lights and I worked at 10 o'clock at night. It was a way for me to make extra money and take care of a customer. And then you're going to recommend me to 3 more people, which is what you did. I get back to the shop. It's 11 o'clock at night. I got to be up at 5 in the morning. We got to take everything out of the truck, clean it, organize it, get ready for the morning because I can't do it in the morning. Like it was a decade. It was a decade of 5 hours sleep nights. That was like, yeah.
And that people just aren't built like that. Very few people are built like that these days.
You could find me at Cornell. If I sat down, I fell asleep. Like I was just exhausted.
Why even go to school?
Well, being from the neighborhood, I felt like I needed that badge. I felt like I needed, something to say that I was qualified. And the opportunity came up. A friend of mine in high school said, hey, why don't we go to Cornell right before we were graduating high school? And I said, how the hell are we going to go to Cornell? My grades suck. Like, how would we get in? We didn't even start the process. We're graduating in 2 months. He said, well, my dad's a professor. He can get us in. So I said, wow. I go, you got a guy. This is great. So we went on our interviews. We got our suits. My dad, my mom was bragging about how Joseph was going to Cornell for an interview. Neither of us got accepted. Oh. Neither of us got in. So, but then I said, I got to figure this out. And I ultimately did.
And how? Just by studying? Did you have to take a ton of time away from the business?
I found out that we could go extramural. We could take 3 classes. Kids that were accepted took 5 classes. We could take 3 classes. They won't count towards anything. But then we could reapply and say, look, we got 3A. Like we know what we're doing. We can handle it. So we did it. We reapplied and they said, nope, we're not letting you go in the back door. And so my friend pivoted. He went to UNLV. I stayed because I'm a glutton for punishment. And I did another semester and I reapplied. Nope. 3rd semester, reapplied. Nope. 4th semester, I was broken. Everybody has a breaking point. And I said, I'm going to go to New York. I'm just going to run my business. And my mom, who doesn't want to lose her son, right? Because once I leave the house, I'm experiencing it now with my own kids. So she said, listen, before you pack it in, go meet this woman I teach yoga to. My mom was a yoga teacher. I said, my mom doesn't know anybody. It's a waste of time. But out of respect for my mom, I'll go have the meeting. Sat down with this woman, Anita. She looked at my grades that I had until then. She said, do you like textiles? So I said, I don't really know what a textile was. She said, because there's 92 women in my department and no men, and we're looking for diversity. I said, I love textiles. So she accepted me into the School of Human Ecology, which is within Cornell, where you can study textiles. You can study the science of making fibers and fabrics. You can study design.
So you just wanted to be in there?
I wanted to be, I want I would have been a veterinarian anywhere I just wanted a degree to say I went to this Ivy League school.
That's so interesting because, these days, like I get back then it's all about status and what you can put on your name. But in reality, like, what you were doing is so far beyond anything you could learn in the classroom, at least in my opinion, and also more impressive. And these days, even more so, right? I think the idea of being a college dropout or not going to college because I was doing so well in high school, I already had a business, I already had employees. That sounds more impressive than going to school. If anything, school these days is like boring. I think, that's average.
I would say both. I would say if you could pull off both, because remember, I couldn't scroll through Instagram back then and learn things, right? Like there were actual physical books.
It's also a great school for sure.
Yeah, and so I would be in an accounting class because we studied the business of textiles as well. And I would be applying it to the business I was running. Anything I was learning, chemistry, I was applying it to the business I was running. So for me, it was a home run to be running those things simultaneously. It was great.
Two things that come to mind. First, it's interesting how, and it feels the same in my life too, whenever it's like as close as possible to failure or just like a rock bottom, whatever, somehow something happens, call it luck, destiny, whatever you want. It's usually at the worst of times when something really good happens. And I like to look at it as like a mountain, right? You hit these peaks, everything seems like it's going really well. You talk about this. This is one of the reasons you put on these races is when everything seems like it's working, you hit this peak as if you were climbing a mountain and now you got to go down. And then you hit this ravine at the bottom of this mountain, right? And that sucks and it hurts to fall. But that allows you to climb to an even higher level. And that's just what life is. It's like this giant mountain and you need to keep on falling in order to keep going higher. But that's what failure is. And so many people, especially these days, especially guys my age, are terrified of failure because I don't know if it's, criticism from others or, they don't want to harm their own ego. But I'm curious, how many times in your life have you failed and it seems like, this is the shittiest thing to ever happen to me. And then it turned out to be the best thing to ever happen to you. Talk about the story of the Chinese farmer in a way.
Couple thoughts on that. I've failed literally 1,000 times, whether it was pissing off a customer, not making payroll on time, making a bad trade when, my second career on Wall Street. So 1,000 failures. But there's a great book everybody should read, Sun Tzu, The Art of War. And he basically says, if you want your army to win, to succeed, its back has to be against the wall, right? The proverbial burn the boats. Mm-hmm. So to your point, when you're out of the valley, your back's against the wall. When you're out of the valley and you're feeling good and you become complacent. It's Poirier's comment to Conor McGregor, like, there's no way he's going to beat me. He won't take his silk pajamas off in the morning because he's too comfortable, right? It's Rocky Balboa after he wins the fight. Yeah. And right. So I failed 1,000 times. Failure is good. It sucks when you're going through it, but makes you better, makes you stronger.
Well said. Well said. So then after college, you go on Wall Street. Do you sell your pool business before then? Or did you continue to run at the same time?
I continued to run it. I had hired 2 Polish immigrants. It was my first experience working with immigrants. They were from Poland. They were incredible. They outworked me. There was nothing I could do to break them. If it was 11 o'clock at night and we pulled in with the trucks and we had to work for 2 more hours and get up at 5 in the morning, they still didn't matter. More hours, they were happy. I ended up letting them run the business while I spent a year navigating this Wall Street thing, and ultimately I sold it to them.
Nice. For how much? Do you mind me asking?
I sold it for $500,000 back then, which is nice.
Nice. And did you spend any, have a good time at that point, or just put it all into savings?
No, because now I was on my second career. Now I was in this world of finance. So I thought I was really smart and could figure out how to trade and invest, which turned out to be a disaster in the early days.
It didn't go that well. I was under the impression that it went well, and then you wanted to take a step away.
Didn't go well in the very beginning. I was learning, and again, you've got to make a bunch of mistakes. But then, as I started to get my feet under me, I spun out and started a firm on Wall Street, which I had no business doing.
At what age?
Oh my goodness, let's see. I started the firm in 1997. So you're talking about 28 years old.
And how long were you there for before you stepped away?
I ran that firm from 97. I stepped away in 2010. So 13 years.
Nice. What are some of the misconceptions about Wall Street that you think some young people these days need to understand? Because I think a lot of people think it's glorious. They see Wolf of Wall Street, they see the big checks, they see the nice suits, and then when you really get into it, it sucks in the beginning. It's grunt work, it's tough, it's very competitive. I'm curious, what are some insights you had there that you think people should be aware of?
Well, I don't think, whether you're a mob boss or you run a trading desk or you have a clothing business or you're at a university at a high level, it might look glamorous from the outside, but it's hard work and it's grinding. And, we never see beneath the surface on Instagram. We see the rewards, the nice things, right? So like you're going to grind. If you want the spoils, you've got to grind. Wall Street, the grind is incredibly intense. For us on our trading desk, if we made a mistake, it would cost whatever, 30 grand, 50 grand, like in a moment's notice.
Your company's money or your money yourself?
Both. And so it can be incredibly painful. But when you're thinking about a career, if you're listening or watching this, when you're thinking about a career, you need to go. My father used to say, if you're an amazing salesperson, sell airplanes. Like sell the most expensive thing there is because the commissions are largest on that, right? And so on Wall Street, it's interesting because we have so much money flowing through our fingertips. There were days where we had $3 billion flow through our trading desk. And so, you take a tiny little sliver of that, it's still a giant number, right? But on a day like that, it's very nerve-wracking. You make a mistake, you could be out of business.
And what do those hours look like? I've heard crazy stories. You get home, you finish trading at 9 because you're trading foreign markets, and then you're going out, taking clients out to drinks, and then you're getting home at 1, and then you're back at the office at 5. Is that pretty accurate?
It's pretty accurate. I mean, we didn't have to be 6:30, 7 a.m. on the desk. You probably weren't done every night till 1 in the morning. So it was a grind. And the more time you spent with your colleagues, your potential clients, your clients, the more business you did. So you had to be out all the time. Very common for me to go to dinner, have the waiter clean the table, have that guest leave and have a new person show up, and I do a second dinner and a third dinner in one night. So because the more dinners I did, the more meetings I had, the more hot yoga I did with somebody who went running, the more business we did.
And sorry, what year again did you say you finished up there?
2010.
So that was right after the big crash. What was that like?
A big crash was a disaster. I actually, when the markets were falling apart, I jumped on my bike and I actually bicycled across the U.S. during that whole thing. So I watched it from afar. The trading desks were there was actually a moment where I thought the whole thing was over. I thought like the financial system was just going to collapse. And there was a farmer. At that point in my life, I had sold my business on Wall Street and I moved to Vermont. And so I had a little trading desk in Vermont next to our farm. And the markets were collapsing. It was before I took my bike and left. And I remember talking to this farmer, and he's like, "It'll be fine. Just has to work." Like here was this farmer, this grounded guy that knows nothing about finance. I just spent the last 13 years of my life. I know everything.
Yeah.
And this farmer was like, he was right. I was wrong.
You've heard the story of the Chinese farmer, right?
No.
This is like one of the greatest stories. I try and live my life by this. There's a Chinese farmer, super poor. He's got one son. He's getting up there. He's old. And they have one horse. And their entire means of life relies on this horse to till the soil, whatever. It's all their labor, workforce. And then one day this horse runs away. And the kid, you in this situation, runs to his dad. And he's like freaking out. What are we going to do? We're fucked. And his dad says, maybe. And then the next day the horse comes back with all these wild horses. And the kid goes, oh my God, we're rich. Like, this is a blessing from God. And the dad goes, maybe, the old Chinese farmer. And then the next day or a couple days later, it doesn't really matter. The kid's out riding one of them, trying to tame it because it's wild, throws him off, breaks his back. Horrible. A whole village comes over. This is your only son. What are we going to do? This is horrible. And what does he say? Maybe. A couple weeks later, the conscription officers come because there's a civil war. They're drafting everyone. he can't go, and they end up marching to their death. Every single one of them dies in battle, and he survives because he didn't go. And the whole village again says, this is a blessing in disguise. This is great. And he goes, maybe. So the whole point is like, you really don't know. There is no way to know if whatever's happening right now, whether it's good or bad, is actually good or bad. And you think about like the most perfect example that I can think of is The Rock, right? He wanted to play in the NFL. It was his destiny. His dad did, I'm pretty sure. Everyone thought he was going to, and he didn't get in. And in the moment, he's like, what the fuck, man? My whole life's been a lie. This is screwed. Why me?
Maybe.
Curse the world. Now he's the highest paid actor of all time.
Yeah.
Or was at least a few years ago. So it's good. Whenever anything bad is happening, getting cheated on, your first business failing, getting screwed over by a partner, anything. If you can just remind yourself, I know it's hard, but if you can just remind yourself, like, this actually could be a really good thing later down the line, it's much easier to move on and actually get focused.
Just that mindset will make it more likely that thing, that extra horse, that whatever it may be, is going to turn out to be great for your life. Yeah. Just that mindset.
100%. Well, let's talk a little bit about what you're currently working on. You started Spartan because you started doing races because you were just trying to challenge yourself, right? Yeah. And you're like, I could do this better. Or was there?
Yeah, no, I was competing. I remember specifically, I was in probably an 18 or 20 hour kayak section of a race, and so I had a lot of time to think. And I was thinking, man, if I could do this as a business and not sit on a trading desk and all that insanity and all the business I've done, imagine living this life, adventurous life out in, and so it was born 24 years ago.
With cool people, I imagine, right? What are the kinds of people that compete in these extreme human races?
Some of them are endurance hippies, I call them, because that's all they do. And so you've got to be well-rounded in life. You got to not only be able to go climb a mountain, swim a lake, but you should be able to sit down and, balance your finances and figure out how to operate your life, your family. So, but very cool people, willing to take chances, fun to be around, high energy. I was just having a blast, and I was roping all my friends into it, and it was so transformative for myself and everybody I brought into it that I said I got to turn this into a business.
And then I asked you this earlier, but I think it's great for the podcast. What are the early days like? Because it's so easy to look at it now. This is awesome. You got people working for you. You can just tell them what to do. It seems like glorious, right? But the early days are the most important ones, and sometimes the hardest. So what are those first days like setting up a race?
Well, I've coined this term, fire, ready, aim, right? In the old days, we would say, get ready, aim, fire. Mm-hmm. But when you're in the event business, and I learned this when I started when you're in the event business, you fire first. You put a date out there and you say, on this date, we are going to have an event. Mm-hmm. Once you have the date announced, you're going to spend $500,000 whether one customer shows up or 10,000 shows up. So now your back is against the wall, like Sun Tzu talks about, right? Like, you are stressed, the boats are burned. How the hell are we going to get enough people there buying tickets to pay the $500,000 we've just committed to? So the early days, to say they were nerve-wracking is an understatement. I mean, it wasn't one event. It was like 5 and then 10 and then 50 announced, and I've got to fill them, and I've got to find customers. I got to convince people about this brand. And it was, it was a disaster.
What do you say to convince someone to give you money to do something that sucks?
I used to lie to people. I used to say to people, hey, we're going to do this big barbecue, this event. It's going to be fun. But it wasn't a barbecue. It was a race.
What are their reactions?
Well, when they get there, people were pissed. But ultimately, when they went through it, if they went through it and they came across the finish line, they were like, they were changed.
Everyone was happy.
It was incredible. But I had to get them there. And most people come up with like excuses, and they can't, and they're busy that week. And but I had to convince, remember in those early days, I had to convince 5, 10, 50,000 people. I wasn't a known brand. Nobody knew what we were doing. This wasn't even a sport. We created it. So yeah, it was a rugged 18 years. 18 years, right? For 2018 before it started to work financially, finally, and then COVID hit.
And what is that like? Once again, talk about that climb and that mountain and reaching that peak, and you're like, wow, man, this is finally paid off. And then COVID. What are you going through mentally?
At that time, I was with Gerard Butler. We were in Sparta, Greece.
Oh,
when
are you guys friends?
Yeah,
nice.
And while we're in Sparta, lighting, we have the torch going for the Olympics through Greece, and Trump shuts the country down. And my phone is blowing up, and my wife is like, "You have to get home. You're not going to be able to get back."
By the way, quickly, give us some context of where the business is at, like number of employees, yearly revenue. Yeah.
2018, 300 events, 45 countries, 1.5 million participants back then.
And
annually.
$150 a ticket?
Yeah, paying whatever, $100 to $150 a ticket. And the country's going to get shut down. So I literally say to myself, I remember looking out at the sunrise in Sparta. I'm just going to do 300 burpees. Let's get some burpees done because I got like, what the fuck am I going to do?
Yeah.
So I sit there and I'm knocking out 300 burpees as I'm thinking through this whole thing. All right, I got to leave. Finish my burpees, high five everybody. I race to Athens. I make my way to the UK. I'm in Heathrow. I call my friend who owns Saks Fifth Avenue, the big clothing retailer, for advice. And he's like, make sure you guys stop spending any money because you're going to have to conserve cash. Like, you're going to have to survive this. And I'm thinking, he's a smart guy. He's very successful, but he's got to be wrong because this can't, Americans, human beings in general, they're not going to want to stay indoors for more than a week, right? So this could only last a week or two. And my board of directors was like, hey, shut things down because this could go on. I'm like,
and what if you're wrong also, by the way? Imagine if you shut everything down and it is only closed for a week and then the country opens back up again and now, you just
I'm out of business. I'm out of business because I don't have any people. I don't have any legacy knowledge. So anyway, we shut it took us too long to shut. We didn't shut deep enough and it went on for us for over 2 years. So I had already sold $45 million worth of tickets. I had to cancel all those races around the world. I couldn't deliver on my promise to those customers. I had people wanting to burn down my house with torches because they had trained, they had paid, they wanted their money
back. But that's
back.
not your fault. How can they be mad at you, especially if you say, yo, the government said we can't do it?
Half of the world believed that we should just be doing this. Half the world thought that Joe wanted to kill people because he wanted people back at doing races. And so it was like half and half. It was like crazy town. So anyway, this went on for 2 years for us. Imagine, by the way, we're in 45 countries. And imagine some of those countries and some of those locales were saying to us, come back. We're going to let you put on a race. So then we'd say, oh, good news. Canary Islands, Spain, they're letting us put on a race. Everybody radiate there. We're going to go there. We're going to get out of our houses, right? Get everybody there. Friday, the race is Saturday. Friday, some local politician says, no, you can't have this race.
That's fucked up. And
that happened a lot. Around, like, so for those 2 years, it was start, stop. It was fucking crazy town. So no one would believe in Joe or the business anymore because, like, I can't buy a ticket from this guy. He's full of shit.
Yeah.
Right? And so we racked up tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars of legacy bills. And
what is that, legacy bills?
People sending in invoices that I couldn't pay. I mean, I owed money for this. I owed money for that. Venues, trucks being moved, like, crazy because I couldn't put on the races. I couldn't do anything. I was completely frozen. So finally, the world opens back up. And that first year it wasn't gangbusters. And the second year, 2023 was okay. But this year, knock on wood, this year is hockey sticking.
Hell yeah. I mean, I went to a race in San Diego, as you guys might know if you watch my content, and it was fucking badass. It was epic. Tons of people there. 300 people came out for our little collab we did with them, and it was awesome. So how do you, when everything that could go wrong is going wrong? I have two questions. Number one, how do you maintain your sanity? On top of that, how do you continue to be like a present husband and father at the same time? Or are you pretty good at just like, as soon as I walk through those doors at home, it's back to the second job?
All right. So two questions there. So the first question is, how do you hold it together while the world is ending? So I believe I actually give a speech on this. I believe that when you're in the valley of death, when your back's squeezed against the wall and there's no more space, can't get any worse, that's when the naysayers show up. Like, oh, Lucas, I told you not to start that clothing business. It would never work. I told you weren't smart enough. I told you weren't, right? That's when they show up, right when it's worst. And sure enough for me, in that moment, the Wall Street Journal called me. My phone rang. It was a writer from the Wall Street Journal's bankruptcy section. They want to write an article on the cover of the bankruptcy section that Joe's not paying his bills. And so, like, that's the worst thing that could happen to me, because if customers and potential customers see that, they're not signing up for races.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, how is this helpful for humanity? We change lives. Why is this, like, I'm losing my mind. I'm pacing back and forth. I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe everybody was right. Maybe we should just declare bankruptcy. Maybe we should just do it. I wouldn't have to pay all these bills. And then I remembered, wait a minute, Joe. It's the naysayers. Wall Street Journal's a naysayer. Hang in there. So we hung in, and by hook and by crook, one day, and duct tape and paper clips, we made it to the next week, and we made it to the next week, and we made it to the next week. And again, knock on wood, we are here today. So you need to know what the map looks like in achieving success, because you're going to face obstacles like I just described. And if you know what the map is, if it's imprinted in your brain, you'll be able to, mentally get through that. So that's number one. Number two, how am I at home? I'm not a believer, like a lot of influencers talk about, like, oh, be present and leave everything outside the house before you go in. I get it. But the reality is, it's not work-life balance. Very hard to do. And I commend people that could do that. I think it's work-life integration. I remember growing up in those houses with all, those customers I had, and the family would have a tow truck business. And the mom would be making sauce with meatballs and sausage, and she'd be, stirring the sauce while she had a CB radio in her hand, and she was calling in tow truck calls, right? And the dad was out driving the truck, and like, it was a family affair. Or they had a pizza place, and they had to be up at 5 a.m. to make the dough. So I bring it in the house, and we do business. And I mean, you're in my house right now.
Yeah.
Right? So,
and for everyone listening or watching, Joe's household is badass, man. Like, all of his kids are studs. I'm just really curious to see, like, what they turn into, right? Yeah. One of your, can I talk about them a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
The oldest son is at Stanford now, wrestling, right?
Yeah.
It's badass, man. The other three, they're all doing cool stuff. 2 boys, 2 girls, right?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, like, that is the ultimate goal, the ultimate privilege, is to be a father, and at least for guys. And I think there's a lot of good lessons in there that you can bring home. I fully agree. Obviously, don't get angry and let that out on anybody else. But, like, hey, guys, this is what dad's going through right now. And I think it's important that I explain this to you and not just pretend like it's not happening, because this will make you better one day. And his kids are all very, I would say, capable is probably the best word.
It's a good word. Yeah, it's a good word. They we'll see. Hopefully, knock on wood, it's my first time around. So hopefully we did a good job.
Yeah. I commend you, man. Well, let's go back a little bit. You kind of moved all over the world. How many different countries have you lived in?
So I had met a guy, I'm really good at having conversations with somebody like you, and they say something, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I want to apply that to my life. And I had met a guy who just did like a whole tour with his family around the world. And he said, when the kids are still in that 7 to 10 year old mark, you can actually move around, and it's fine. And I thought, we're building our business. How the hell am I going to launch Asia? How the hell am I going to launch, Canada, all these different places? I asked my wife, I said, let's just move. We'll move around. We'll go Asia Light. We'll go to Singapore first. So we went to Singapore. We did a year in Singapore. We did a year in Tokyo, which was amazing. We did a stint in China. We came back to Vancouver. We did a year in Vancouver. We went to Boston. We did 2 years in Boston, and now we're in Florida.
It sounds so, it's hard enough to build a business to a massive level. How do you do it when you don't speak their language at all? Especially in China. How did you build Spartan in China?
The crazy one actually was Japan. The whole world was pushing me against Japan. It's not going to work.
Are they even into that kind of stuff?
Well, that's what everybody said. They're not into it, right? And so I spent some money, and we did some focus groups. They set up tables. I was back in the US at the time, And they said, oh no, we had the focus group. We showed them the videos. Everybody wins. They would never do this. It would never work. I said, it's impossible. I said, it's operating right now in 35 countries. You can't tell me the Japanese are different. Like, it's impossible. So we moved to Japan. Within one day of me being one day, I'd been working on this for 3 or 4 years. Within one day of being in Tokyo, I met a woman. She helped me find a location. We put a date on the calendar. We announced it, sold out.
How many tickets?
6,000 tickets, sold
Damn.
out. So another
what were the facial expressions and the reactions?
Barbed wire and
after?
blood, and this is way too crazy for us in Japan. Not at all. They love it. I mean, I'm in Malaysia. We launched a race in Malaysia back then. I go out. The field is full of women in black burqas. It's 110 degrees out. They're carrying buckets. They're filling them with rock. It was unbelievable. So humanity loves what we do. It doesn't matter what size, what shape, what religion. They love it.
What are some of the countries, 2 questions. What are some of the countries that are obsessed the most with what you guys do? And then what's like the fastest growing country right now that you guys are in, besides the US?
Very early days, we went to Eastern Europe. So we were in Slovakia, we were in Czech, we were in Poland, we were in Hungary, Romania. And so they are rabid. Like if we have a Spartan water bottle, because we do a deal with a company over there, you will see photos all over the internet. They take the bottle home with their medal. They are all in, Eastern Europeans. But I would say we are counter-cyclical. So whatever country in the world is having a bad economic cycle, we do better.
Really?
Yeah. So when things are going south.
Do you think that's because people have more time on their hands?
No, they start thinking, we're not going to go spend $1,000 on that cruise or $2,000 on that cruise. Let's go get really inexpensive yet powerful, life-changing entertainment. And that's what we are. So, for $100, $150, you buy 5 coffees or you come out and do this.
I'm not even exaggerating at all. Like, if they see this, they're going to be mad at me. But when I brought our whole team of athletes out to the event we did, right?
Yep.
And then we had our best customers come out. Like I said, it was like 275, 300 people. I also forced my college friends to come. Yep. And amazing guys, but they are not that into fitness. One of them hadn't worked out in a long time, a little bit overweight. I literally had to tell a few of the guys, because at the end of the day, like, I didn't really care if they came, but I knew that it was going to be great for them. So I told a few of them, I said, you guys need to tell these other 2 that are on the fence that I'm going to be really upset if they don't come. And you need to come to support Lucas in this collab that they're doing with Spartan. Because I knew that this is a leadership lesson for anyone listening. I used to do this in the fraternity when no one would listen to me when I was the president. If I was yelling at someone, clean your room, clean this, make sure that chair is moved, go set up the party outside, no one would do it. But if I would go talk to somebody else and say, your president works his ass off for you guys, and like, he does this all for you and he doesn't get paid at all, and you guys are letting him down, it speaks a lot more to people. So I had my other friends go talk to our 2 friends and say, you guys really need to show up for this. Not for you, but for Lucas, because this means a lot to him. And in reality, that was all for them, because I knew they needed it.
Right.
They had literally
the best time.
The best time.
Yeah,
they had the biggest smiles. They're like, let's go do, what was the really hard one? Big Bear. They wanted to go do the Big Bear one after.
Nice.
The elevation, it's hot. The elevation, it's hard to breathe, dusty. And that was really cool to see.
I love it.
And now I don't know if they'll do many more this year, but they definitely
they're addicted. They're personally invited. Anybody watching this, by the way, is personally invited to Abu Dhabi. Lucas and I are going to be there. Come out to the sand dunes. It'll be unbelievable.
Nice. So on that note, because I think this is really important, there have been multiple times in the business's life cycle where maybe you have doubts, maybe it's just really tough.
Every
day, right? What are some stories, or maybe even just one story in particular, of like a life-changing experience that you saw personally, that you heard from someone, that makes it all worth it? Because, at the end of the day, you said...
Well, I get emails and texts every day.
Yeah.
I'm back with my husband, back with my wife, lost 200 pounds, gave up drugs, gave up drinking. But the most powerful was a veteran that came up to me and said, hey, I just want you to know I had a gun to my head last week, but I remembered I had the race. And so I'm here and I'm racing. You saved my life. And I said, dude, you've got free races from now till the time you check out. This is not going to happen on my watch. So I get chills telling you that story, but it could be the folks that come out missing a leg because they only have one leg and they get through it. We had a guy named Casey. He's missing 2 legs. When he was 10 years old, he got run over by a tractor trailer. Casey McAllister. He did the beast in Lake Tahoe with no legs. Gets to the finish line, 12 hours. Gets to the finish line, says, "That's all you got?"
That's insane.
I thought you said it was going to be tough.
Didn't
Joe.
you do it in a wheelchair too, or something like that?
I did it in a wheelchair.
It's fucking crazy.
Yeah. I did it in a wheelchair because I wanted to respect those guys that go out in the wheelchairs. I wanted to see what it felt like, and it was terrible.
Wow. And I think I remember seeing a clip or maybe you talking about it. There was one guy, his friends tricked him into coming. They said, "Oh, it's like a 3-mile walk." And
oh yeah.
What was that? Can you explain that story?
Chris Davis, 696 pounds.
Oh my God.
Came out.
Insane.
We heard about him. We brought him to the farm in Vermont, 18 months, got him down to 265 pounds.
He just lived out on the farm.
Lived on the farm. His company, Comcast, gave him a leave of absence, and we, it started with 10 miles of walking a day. Then it was 10 miles of walking a day with a sandbag. Then it was 20 miles a day, raw fruits and vegetables. He was losing 2-3 pounds a day.
What do you say to someone who might be in a position like that, whether it's extreme obesity or maybe it's simply something more mental, crazy depression, maybe addiction? What do you say to someone having seen all of these like life-changing experiences?
There's only one way out. I'm going to sound really like a crazy person here. There's only one way out. There's only one, and that's exercise. And it's got to be really, really uncomfortable, really, really challenging. But like, God forbid somebody close to you dies, you go into a depression. God forbid you've got a drug problem. God forbid you got to drink. Whatever that thing is, there is only one way out, and that is exercise.
Yeah.
Extreme exercise. You've got to move that addiction up, because think about the alternative. The alternative is I go see a psychologist every day. We talk about the same thing over and over. We're on this constant loop. I stay in bed late. I take drugs. I drink. Like, what are the alternatives? There's no good alternative.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. Well said. I think so. So what about this? You work with a lot of young entrepreneurs, guys younger than me, but I'm sure people of all ages. What are some of the things that you're constantly trying to instill in them, whether it's like general life principles or more business specific? Because for everyone listening, we were at a young entrepreneurs conference yesterday where Joe and I both spoke. And I've never seen so many people like so interested and leaning forward in their chairs wanting to talk. But I didn't actually get to see your speech. I was sleeping on the couch.
Well,
I was tired.
You fell asleep.
I was sleeping on the couch.
Fell asleep. Yeah. There's an ancient story of Lycurgus, the founder of Sparta, Greece. And very early days when he takes over and he implements this new change of their culture, they're going to train like crazy. They're going to bleed in their training, so they only sweat and battle. They're going to eat only one soup, black soup. They're going to stay away from their wife, like all these rules. And somebody tries to kill him and almost takes out his eye. And so some of his guys next to him say, you want us to finish him off? No. Have him live with me. And they bring in this guy that tried to kill him to live with him. And after a month of living with him, they're like, oh my God, he's actually living the principles he's preaching. He's actually we need to do this. And so you and I did that. You got to see me. I actually lived the principles I preach. Yeah. And I've had to constantly wake you up now for the last 3 days. Yeah. But which is very normal. I'm not picking on you. But what was the question?
So what do you tell these young kids? These kids, and sometimes they ask very general questions. How do you start a business? And I think at the end of the day, like, you just have to do it. You have to start. You have to experience it on your own. But what are some of the general
big ones? If you're listening, you're watching, I tell number one, just start. Fire, ready, aim. Take a shot. You're not ready. Your product's not ready. You haven't fully thought it through. The business plan isn't done. Fire the first shot. Get the date on the calendar. Test it. Talk to people. Get feedback. Edit it. Change it. Spartan, what it is today was not what it was 24 years ago, right? The Wall Street trading firm, what it was when I sold it was not. Same thing with the pool business. So you start out with one thing, and it's wet clay, and you're editing it along the way. So fire, ready, aim. Number two, you've got to communicate like a movie star. You got to be like Lucas. You got to be able to look in the camera. You got to talk. You got to be able to convince people of things. You got to be able to sell your ideas internally, externally. Number three, I say you got to work like an immigrant, politically incorrect, but like remember those Polish kids that worked with
Yeah.
me. You got to be an animal. And then number 4, you got to have gratitude like a monk. Be super grateful, because when the shit is hitting the fan, everything's going wrong, you're alive.
There's a really cool entrepreneur who I had on the podcast as well, Ryan Levy. Have you spoke with him yet? His little phrase was, "It's a privilege to be under pressure."
Yeah,
I really like that one.
I like that.
Might even get it tattooed on me. I love getting
like
quotes
that.
tattooed on me.
Yeah.
But I agree, 100%. Well, so obviously you made this big life change and you completely switched over everything, switched careers, lifestyles. That's a very hard decision to make, and most people don't make that decision. They end up living their whole life because they think once they pick a path, that's kind of where they go. And it is very hard to change and move a different direction. But hypothetically, if you did stay on Wall Street, where do you think you'd be today?
I wouldn't be as healthy as I am. Not just physically healthy, but mentally healthy, right? It's a lot of sitting and a lot of lack of movement, and I wouldn't feel as blessed as I feel about changing lives. Like, I wish the Department of Defense would just pay me to do what I do. I don't even, you know what I mean? Just cover the bills. You guys it could literally become part of the Army. You know what I mean? Like, I just like doing what I do.
That's another thing we should talk about. I think it's really, some people will probably really disagree with this, but I think, and I'd be willing, me saying this, I'll be the first one to do it, even though I'm older than this. I think when everyone turns 18, every American citizen, man or woman, should have to either join the military or do some sort of social service. Maybe it's firefighter, police. Maybe it's
we're 100% aligned.
Doing schools in
Yeah.
Africa, filtering water. And
Mandatory. Come out of high school, or maybe that last year of high school,
Yeah.
you've got to do this. I would, even at 55 years old, if we can get the government to do it, I would join for the year.
Yeah.
I would do it.
I think if you do it for 2 years and then you get to go to college for free.
Yeah.
And I think that's doable. I think it's very doable.
100%. Even if you had to do a year after college,
Yeah.
we'd get our heads around that.
It'd be so beneficial for everyone because it would not only teach good skills, but it would show you how great we have it over here, especially if you have to go do some social work over in Africa.
Make your bed every day, show up on time, take care of yourself physically, and like, home run.
And
it would change it. Like, look, I love Ukraine. I'm a big supporter of Ukraine.
Yeah.
I'm a big support. Like, imagine if we took that money and instituted a program like that. We'd change the country overnight. We
Yeah.
talk about all these ridiculous things we're fighting over. Just do that. You change the country overnight.
That would piss a lot of people off. I don't think a lot of people would be, even though it would be good long term, no doubt, that'd be hard to instill and get change passed into law. And maybe part of that is un-American because it's forcing people to do something. But I do genuinely think it would be
Game
good
changer
for everyone. So finishing it up here. If you watched the vlog that led into this podcast, for me and my company, we're about to go out and raise. Took a while to come to that decision, but I want to scale this company fast. You have a lot of experience in this. How much have you raised total to date, you think?
My lifetime, probably 50 million.
Okay, so you're very qualified to answer questions on this. What are some of the most important things to bring up when I'm pitching to investors, you think?
Well,
Beyond just basic level.
So a friend of mine is 90 years old. He's traded securities for 78 years since he's 12 years old. And he's taken a ton of companies public. He's got a great saying. He said, it's not about the horse, it's about the jockey. So just remember, they're going to be focused on you. Because if Lucas is really good, it doesn't matter if it's SquidHaus, or he might edit it. It might change a little bit. Maybe it won't be a clothing business. It'll be a media brand. But so they got to bet on you. They got to know you're all in. They got to know your back's against the wall. They got to know you will be embarrassed if this doesn't work. You're honorable. You're honest. So the big bet is on the jockey. Remember that. Number 2, you probably should go through a bunch of pain before you raise. And I know you've been doing this for a few years, so that might be the case. But you want to stretch it out as long as you can. But in parallel, while you're stretching it out, while you're feeling the pain, while you don't have enough capital, you're on fumes, because it forces you to make good decisions, right?
Yeah.
So while that's happening, though, get your books and records in order, because in that moment, when you get to strike, when you find that right partner, you don't want to spend 7 months having them go through a bunch of old books and records that they can't figure out and determine if Lucas is telling us the truth.
Yeah.
So have your shit together when it comes to financials, even though you might not be raising at that second. And then finally, I would say, don't raise as much as you want in the beginning. You know, make it a little less, because you don't know if it's the right partner. You won't know until you get into bed with them. So, you know what I mean? Don't raise it all at once.
Well, on that note, because that brings up my second question, is what's your advice for avoiding bad investors? What if someone's willing to write a check and they don't want to do anything, or do you have any experience with people who you just like, man, if I could go back, you don't have to name anyone, but how do I avoid bad investors? What are questions to ask?
Yeah. I mean, I look, are they strategic? Are they going to lean in? Have they built a business before? If they're only financial people and that's all they've done, that's probably not going to be the person that's best for you. You've got to see somebody that's actually built a business, ideally in your industry, done really well, has that money, and can lean in and help you.
Well said. All right. Some final questions to end this episode here. I don't really believe in regrets and wishing you could go back and do stuff differently, but I think it's a valuable question to ask. So if you could go back to my age, 23, what would you do differently?
Maybe. Maybe. I mean, I don't know if I would change it. I wouldn't be here today if I wouldn't. Maybe I would spend more time. I would have spent more time with my dad and my mom. They're not here anymore, so I would have spent more time with my dad and my mom.
That's valuable. I think even for us young guys, like, I know I'm going through that right now. My mom's called me. She'll probably watch this. Mom, I love you. She's called me like 4 or 5 times past couple of weeks. When are you coming home? And I'm just like, Mom, I can't. Like, I just got the videographer. Like, I'm traveling a ton. So I need to do a better job of going and seeing them, because it's important.
Yeah. You only get one.
So, okay, what about this? And a little bit of a shift, but same sort of subject. What are some things that felt like the most important thing in the world when you were younger, that as you got older, you realized that this doesn't really matter at all?
Well, I remember being enamored with material things and superficial nonsense. But I mean, all I really need is a cabin, a stove, like a salad.
Why keep going then? Is it the love of grinding and building? Why are you still, you seem like you have quite a bit of free time on your hands, and you have the business run in a very good way that allows you to be doing your own thing and not like stressing all day long. But why continue to build it?
Well, I don't know if I'd give the same answer had the pandemic not hit. So right now I'm still digging my way out of the pandemic, right? We still owe people money. We're still getting back on top to where we were pre-pandemic. So I want to get that done. I think I'm fueled for sure by the emails of the lives changed. And I don't know. I just don't quit. I just don't, somebody said recently, oh, my neighbor retired. I told him, you're a quitter. Right. So like, I don't know. I love work.
I think the moment you retire is the day you start the death clock.
Right.
And the second you stop using your brain, you actually speed up the amount of the time you have left. So I'm assuming you're going to work till the day you die, right? Because you love it.
I think I'm one of those. Yeah.
Nice. Well, dude, I have so much respect for you, man. I respect your integrity and your work ethic. And so thank you again for coming on. Thanks for having me. He's been letting me live at his house past couple of days, waking up early, except for today. Woke up early yesterday to hit a hard-ass workout. So thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. And if you guys don't follow Joe, probably the best, much better than me, best person to follow, dropping daily bombs, knowledge. And if you DM him, he might just give you a free ticket as well. So I'll link all of his stuff below.
Email me, don't DM me, because I don't check those DMs.
There you go.
Joe@Spartan.com.
Perfect. Thank you guys for watching.
All right. You're awesome.